In this video, we're going to take a look at a green ink by Noodlers, a part of their Warden series, Bad Green Gator. Now, as always, there's timestamps down below so you can skip around, but if you've got the time, I'd appreciate you checking out the entire video. Also down in the description is a link to the green ink playlist, so if you want to see more, you can find those there. I'm an ink guy, and let's get into the first writing sample done on 90 GSM Clairfontaine. There's no bleeding, but there's a lot of spots that are showing themselves as being very deep into the page. It's also showing a lot of ghosting as a result of that, which is not really a common thing on this paper. Now we have no feathering, no spread, no color variation in the writing, no tone variation by pen. It's all exactly the same, so it's working very well in that way. The extra fine took 2 seconds to dry, the medium took 3. It shows you how aggressive this bonds with the paper. The scrubby for both do show some color variation, but we're not getting it in the writing, and the smear test you could recover if you smeared while you were writing. To have a range of experience with this ink, all of the writing samples are done with a Jinhao 159 with a 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a medium, and a Jinhao X750 with an extra fine. Then a Pilot Metropolitan with a medium nib was inked up, used for a day, and used to take the notes for this video. The next writing sample is done on 52 GSM Tomoe River. No bleeding, but a lot of ghosting. Again, it's a thin paper. No feather, no spread, no shading, no tone variation. Very consistent in that. The extra fine took 6 seconds to dry. The medium took 11. The scrubby for both are showing no color variation. We're not getting it in the writing. And the smear test you could not recover if you smeared while you were writing. I agree with Vita. There's a lot to learn by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. A line of ink is put down, and then it's put into water for 10 to 15 seconds. Now, we see this telltale above and below line from where the line of ink was put down. Very frequent for some of these more resistant inks. And then a bunch of the green moves up. Now, we don't see any other colors mixed in, meaning this is all that same green dye giving it its color. The one on the right is let dry for 10 minutes before it's put into water. And you see all of that green has really stayed in the bottom, very bonded with the paper. The interesting thing that occurs on this one is you see a very light purple tone that is moving up. So the first chromatography doesn't show that purple bit that shows up in the second. But I do expect this to be quite resistant. The next writing sample is done on 80 GSM Rhodia dot pad. We have no bleeding, but we have a lot of spots where this ink has gotten very aggressive into the paper. It's gone quite deep, leading to a lot of ghosting in spots. Again, not normal for this paper, so much more an act of the ink. Now we have no feather, no spread, no shading in the writing, and no tone variation. So it's been very consistent in that way. The extra fine only took 3 seconds to dry. The medium only took 4. The scrubby for both do show some tone variation, but we're not getting it in the writing. And the smear test you could definitely recover if you smeared while you were writing. Resistance tests are done to see how this ink could be expected to perform on the page, and more important, how hard it may be to clean from your pen. The smear is allowed to dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, it has no issue with being highlighted after. So be safe doing that in your notes. Now that's obvious from the chromatography and what you see here happening with the water, which was nothing. Pen flush did start to break it down a little bit, but leaving a lot of it on the page. 1/3 bleach solution started to break it down, but still leaving a lot on the page. Now that's part of the security feature of this ink, that it is really resistant. The thing is, in order to completely get this out of the converter, it did take a little bit of pen flush. I wound up completely disassembling the pen and found a little bit of this ink still holding on to that feed some. So it took some work with pen flush. Not a lot. I soaked it for about 10 minutes disassembled, but it did take pen flush to get it out of my pen entirely. The next writing sample is done on Leuchtturm 1917 paper. No bleeding, minor ghosting, very minor ghosting. We have no feather, no spread. We're actually seeing some tone variation in the writing. We see some dark spots occur in the stub, in the extra fine, and in the medium. So pretty good. We haven't seen shading before with this ink. The extra fine took 4 seconds to dry. The medium took 6. You know what? I said there's no spread, but this extra fine is definitely more of a fine, and this medium's more of a broad. So I do want to say that it did spread some here. The scrubby for both show a little color variation, and we're definitely getting some spots in the writing. Smear test, you probably could not recover if you smeared while you were writing. For the inks tested, the average viscosity was 2.5, with a realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Noodler's Bad Green Gator has a viscosity of 2.07, so it is just a little bit wetter than normal. If you're interested in how the viscosity tests are done and all of that kind of stuff, then down in the description is a link to that video. Now, let's take a look at a composition notebook like you would have used in a science class. We have no bleeding, but we see that the ink is getting very deep into the paper. Not all the way through, but I do think this might stop me from using the back of the page for the amount of ghosting we're getting. It's a thinner paper. No feathering, no spread, no shading in the writing. Now the extra fine is a little lighter than the medium. The extra fine only took a second to dry. Its scrubby shows no color variation. There is none. And the smear test, you can't smear it, so don't even worry about it. For the inks tested, the average dry time was 17 seconds, with the realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. Noodler's Bad Green Gator has an average dry time of 5 seconds, quite possibly being one of the fastest drying inks that I've tested. The last writing sample is done on 20-pound copy paper. So yes, we get a lot of bleed very heavy into the page. None of it came through and corrupted the page underneath, but all of it means you can't use the back of the paper. We have no feathering, which is, in this case, amazing to me. We do have spread, noticeable in the extra fine that looks almost as thick as the medium. The medium doesn't look like it's spread though. We have no shading in the writing and no tone variation between the two of them. The extra fine only took 1 second to dry. Its scrubby is actually showing a little color variation left to right, but it's not there in the writing. And the smear test, you can't smear it, so don't worry about it. Instead of finding inks that look like Noodler's Bad Green Gator, I'd prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. I went with a black ink, also by Noodler's, which has a little bit of a green lean to it, which was what made me choose it. And I went with Dark Matter. If you'd prefer a different complement color, then down in the description are links to those playlists. So what do I think of this Warden series by Noodler's Bad Green Gator? It's got the security feature, and it's a very resistant ink. It's not a bad tone at all. It's pretty good. Any issues? Just one. Who uses green ink that they need the security feature for it? If you know who needs green ink with this security feature, please let me know down in the comments. So what nib and pen give the best writing experience with this ink? Well, it pretty much looks the same all the time, but in some of the writing samples we saw that this could be an aggressive ink. So to tame it back a little bit with that, I would go with a medium to dry flow, fine or extra fine pen, just really to get control of that aggressiveness. I hope you got something out of this video, and in the next video we're going to take a look at Sailor Kobe number 16.